Welcome, welcome. It's Thursday evening. We're live on the Smart Connector group and on multiple other platforms. And I am here with a most exciting guest, Ian Clarke. Welcome, Ian.
Hi, Jane. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
It's really
So,
good to be here.
Ian, I've just been waiting to interview him for ages. He has such an amazing story. So, after calling out racism in one of the world's largest banks, and we will get on to that story, the only person to publicly do so, because as you can imagine, it's not going to go down well, right? Ian went on to found a consultancy which raises the imperative for allowing uniqueness into the workplace. Okay, not conformism, right? Which is obviously something that a lot of big businesses like. Okay, so he's steadfast in his delivery of actionable change and sets out manageable strategies to achieve them without judgment. So he's a highly qualified diversity and inclusion trailblazer and a multi award winning human rights actionist with confidence built over 15 years in financial sector leadership. So, yeah, great to have you here, Ian.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think what I'd really like to do, Ian, and this is, something that I was literally blown away by, is actually have you tell your story because, you have had an amazing journey, really, haven't you, to where you are right now. So love to hear you share that really with our viewers and listeners.
I mean, it's been a year. It's been a year since I was an investment banker, and now I'm a multi-award-winning, multi-world record-breaking rights actionist and the head of a consultancy. I just like it. Talk about an identity crisis. Like it's changed so many times. Like, am I a banker? Am I a psychologist? Am I an entrepreneur? I don't know what I am, but I've given up labeling myself, and maybe that's probably the lesson I should have learned from the start of this. But it's so good to catch up with you again, because the first time you and I met it was really not long after I came out of banking. So you've kind of been there with me through like this story that is still kind of changing and evolving, and it's still happening like before me. So it's been really interesting few months and year, although many stressful, many tears, but also many happy moments like you saw last week at the Rising Stars Awards. So I guess the message is clear from me, and you said this yourself. A lot of companies like conformism and conformity. That's called a culture fit. I actually teach companies that actually we really should be looking for a supplemental fit. Supplemental fits when you hire people that add and enrich your culture, and they bring new skills and talents and diversity and uniqueness to your firm that will help you stand out, and really make the most of your brand, your product, and ultimately your P&L. Simple as that.
Definitely. Yeah. So Ian, tell us about your history. How did you come to be in this position today? Because as I said, your story is quite powerful. So let's hear about your corporate career and what happened.
So I was the first and only candidate of Black ethnicity allowed onto the world's then largest bank's executive management scheme in 2007. After graduating, the first in my family from university, from not one but two degrees in psychology and financial services management. I was also the only gay applicant that year from 40,000 candidates. I was the only psychologist they had ever admitted onto the scheme, which I might come on to regret after a while. I spent 14 years working my way up the ranks, from retail branch manager initially through to sort of risk management, strategic retail strategy in London, commercial banking, and then I leapfrogged corporate banking to join the investment bank in 2011 as an investment banking associate, deputy relationship manager, deputy global relationship banker, and then vice president and director of global banking sales in transaction banking by the time I was 28. And that just, my career just kept ballooning from there. I moved to New York City. My influence in the bank kept growing. I founded the Graduate Inclusion Committee, the Advancing Black Inclusion Committee, the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. I was the lead speaker for the Women's Network, and I was also the head of governance for our LGBT network. So I had about 12,000 employees, ultimately a duty of care and a responsibility to marginalised employees as they were to promote their interests internally and to champion their rights and opportunities. 14 years. I was also global head of innovation for our sector sales team, and also the lead on all customer content globally. I was producing that for the sales team to use with clients. And these weren't small clients. These were healthcare, retail, consumer brands, technology, media, telecoms. They were Apple, they were, PayPal, they were Johnson & Johnson, Merck, Pfizer. All through COVID, I was looking after the real the top echelons of the Fortune 500 fell to me.
Yeah,
That
so
was me last year.
yeah. So I mean, really an incredible high flyer, and also like a huge amount of responsibility as well. I mean, so much landed at your door, didn't it, Ian, in that role?
It was 16 hours a day. Like,
Yeah,
really, it was
at a
quite
very young
crushing.
age.
But it
Yeah.
was also, I'm a bit of a workaholic. I think since you are too as well. So it was probably one of the reasons why I get along so well. But I really just always wanted to. A lot of people join banking because they want money, right? It really frustrated me when I'd go to careers fairs representing the bank, and everyone coming up to me going, "What's your bonus? How much do you earn? How much money can I earn?" And every now and then, someone would come up to me and say, I really want to join banking because I want to make a difference. And I know it sounds corny, but those were the ones that I loved, because I've always believed that banks exist to transfer wealth from people with lots of money, the lenders, to people without much money, the borrowers. And that's how banks amplify wealth in an economy. And that is our purpose, right? We can talk a lot about human purposes here, but all companies also have a purpose. So I was there to promote this long-term purpose of the bank, to redistribute wealth around the economy. But surrounding me were a lot of very short-term self-promoters who did not understand and ultimately did not like the way that I prioritized other objectives, different perspectives. We shouldn't be so
Yeah.
scared of them.
Yeah, and so standing for this really important role, and obviously you were wearing multiple hats, but one of the things that you were responsible for was effectively diversity and inclusion, right? So tell us what happened, your story.
So I after George Floyd, I read the room, and the thing that struck me was, we can all agree university to free Brittany, but it's only Black people that stick up for Black rights. It's only women that champion women's rights, and I didn't think that was right. So I instinctively gravitated towards allyship. So I started writing a advisory paper for senior leadership to help them get to grips more with what was happening on the ground. There was a real hierarchy within the bank, and I didn't get the impression that they truly understood the sentiment of the people that I was talking to. So I wrote this report. I interviewed 100 staff, past and present. They were women, they were Black people, they were Asian people, they were gay, they were straight, they were disabled, they were able, they were neurodiverse, you name it. And I really wanted to capture a broad array of views. And I started writing this paper. But what struck me was every single story, every single interview I went for was the same. And they were all reporting the same perpetrators as the reason they were leaving the bank. I remember the worst interview I had, it really struck me for six, was the head of the Black Network. And this woman was incredible. She had been campaigning for Black rights for 20 years, inside and outside the bank. And yet her job title was assistant vice president, right? She was more junior than me. And when I spoke to her, I said, what do you think, how do you think senior management are doing? And she said, Ian, if it's up to me, I'd recommend that every single Black person in this bank resigned today. There is no future for us in this organization.
Oh,
And that really broke my heart to hear her say that. I realized this is a big problem. So rather than, I either had a choice. I could either tell the truth, or I could, lie and try and sort of save face a bit. But I decided that every life is a miracle, and each one gets one story to tell. And I wanted my story to be one that wasn't sad, but one that was full of love and truth. So I wrote in that report what I had been told by these people, and I submitted it to the CEO a year ago at the start of this month, and I copied in the senior leadership team. And I just waited. I said, with bated breath, my arms outstretched, I'm bringing you this report in the hopes that we can work on this together, and we can create some change. And I just held my breath, really. But little did I know, a couple of weeks later, it was all over the press. Someone had leaked the report to Bloomberg, of all people, and within 2 weeks, it was in the press in 120 countries, 16 languages. I was seeing press reports with my face on it, and I couldn't understand the language. I was like, I think this is about me. But it was just bizarre to see the press reporting on what I was doing. It really obviously galvanized a lot of interest. People really passionate about what I was doing. And I started to get messages from all over the world from people saying, this is happening to me in my institution. Thank you for championing I sort of became a bit of an unlikely hero, really. And I hate that word because I was just doing my job. There was no intention of being a hero. So yeah, I unfortunately the bank did not agree that I was a hero. They were very frustrated with me. So I unfortunately they decided not to. I flew to London. I met them. And it was still COVID at this point, so it was still a virtual. Unfortunately, I wanted a face-to-face. But I said, here is a $3 billion plan with 6 points, and it will boost return on equity by 1.2%, which in banking is a lot of money. And it will cost nothing to implement this plan. 12 points, cost neutral, fully costed, all of them within our infrastructure and capability to do it today. We can reach 50-50 gender balance in the boardroom very quickly, not 30 years like we planned. We can do this in 3 to 4 years. Let's just do it. This is free money. Greedy bankers love free money. And they said no. They said no. They didn't. Not only did they not understand a lot of the concepts that I was explaining, but they said no. We don't want to understand. We don't want to change. And I said, well, hang on. It's the commercial thing to do, it's the legal thing to do, and it's the moral thing to do. So if you're not going to do it now, I should get the hell out of here. So I resigned. I became the world's first, and to this day, the only whistleblower in banking on racism and sexism and homophobia. I ticked the whole intersectional box, but I walked over the road to Reuters and I gave an interview. My uncle called my stepdad from Hong Kong, and I didn't know I was on TV in Hong Kong. He's like, why is he on TV? I didn't know I was on TV, Dad, in Hong Kong. I was on TV in Sydney, I was on TV in San Francisco, I was in London, Paris. It was just, wow. My friends are texting me photos from their office with my picture on the wall, like on the TV screen. Like, Ian, you're on TV in our office. Oops.
Oh, it's just incredible, being a whistleblower in a huge bank, particularly on those really touchy subjects, sexism, racism, all of those, homophobia, all of those really, really key topics. You probably, I would imagine that you really hit home in a very below the belt area, if you put it that way. Yeah.
I mean, we have this concept, I mentioned earlier, identity crisis. I think we had an identity crisis in the bank because we thought we were, every time there was a mass shooting and some black people got stabbed or killed or shot, we'd all go, oh no, like what a shame. But then we never looked at ourselves. We never looked at our role. The role that we all play within the world and creating the world that we all want to live in. The brain, like the skin, is just one of 78 organs in the human body, a collection of tissues that work together to achieve a common function, a little bit like human beings, or certainly staff in a bank. But unlike the brain, the skin has absolutely no bearing on our character, our capability, our behavior, our nobility, who we are. It has no bearing on our identity. It is merely the surface upon which you look. And deep beneath the surface, I saw very bad people who could be white or men, and very good people who could be black or women. And there's no rule of thumb to this. There really is no rule of thumb to this. But by allowing only white men to become the Jeff Bezoses and the Elon Musks and the Bill Gates, and every time a black trans woman from the Gambia with a wheelchair, whatever, says, I think I've got an idea, SpaceX. If we kill her every time she says that, then we are denying our world and humanity progress. A huge amount of human potential is wasted, unfortunately, because we only see white men as entitled to succeed. And I think that's such a shame. So I gave us an identity crisis. I spoke up about with a different view that was not universally accepted, but it was a view that enough people accepted to really mix up certainly my bank, and probably the industry. A lot of things happened after my report last year that were they were world first, the world's first ever regulatory investigation into institutional racism in a bank. The first ever black female was appointed to the board of a major international financial institution. The first 3 simultaneous black appointments were made to the board of a major international financial institution in history. 30 new black scholarships at Cambridge, 9 white male managing directors who I implicated in discriminating activity were dismissed or encouraged to leave the business. The phenomenal ripple effects across the industry continue to this day, because one person decided to act differently. It's as simple as that.
Which is just incredible, Ian, because as you said, being a whistleblower is, can you imagine, anybody that's listening, that is a very painful place to be that tall poppy, stick your neck out, see injustice where injustice is happening, and actually try and do something about it. I mean, leaders across history have always been unpopular. They've always been targeted, discriminated against. And, this is, you are looking at, if you are watching this on a video, you are looking at somebody who is a leader, so all hats off to you, Ian. I'm really amazing what you've done,
There's this song, but a lot of things sort of triggered me after George Floyd. You really look at yourself, and I think a lot of people. There's someone, I can't remember who said it, but someone said once. I think it was Churchill. Said, the problem with having problems is there's always someone with worse problems than you, and it's so true. I looked at my career and my life, and I thought, oh, outwardly everyone saw this high flyer. I think you called me a high flyer earlier on, and that's what everyone saw. There's this guy, he's half black, he's half white, call it racially non-binary. I'm a queer, I'm just multiple invisible disabilities. How's he doing this? How's he gone from, he still looks pretty young. Like, where's your dad? I was getting that from one of my clients. But worked his way up. So he must be quite, why is he complaining? But beneath the surface, I faced 16 hate crimes over the 14 years I was in banking, and any one of them would be enough to derail most banking careers. But I'm savvy, I'm streetwise, I'm intelligent, I'm very privileged in that regard. And it was very hard to outwit me because I understand the law, I understand my rights, I understand the social dynamics going on around me because I'm a psychologist, so I can also see things other people can't. And I understood the motivations of the people that were attacking me. Ultimately, they're just scared. They're scared of difference. There is nothing inhuman about them. They are, and actually, I could do the same thing if I was them, with their upbringing and their education, their perspective. It might be me discriminating. Ultimately, we are all human beings, and we all act the same. That's the funniest thing about human differences, is we're all so different, but we're actually not that different at all.
Yeah, and I love that perspective that, it's very compassionate to say, look, it's just fear driven, there's no hate there. You're not saying, you're not vilifying these people, even though you experienced, discriminatory acts. And this is very common. I mean, well, I won't talk about it too much because I don't want to get into mudslinging big corporations, but let's just say some of the people that I know, and certainly me as well, know exactly what you're talking about in terms of, discriminatory behavior in, white male dominated environments, let's just say. So, I do understand that, but I just think that, it's really nice that you are presenting this very refreshing perspective that is actually quite a loving perspective as well, that it's saying, look, in a way, they know not what they do, and it's our job to educate them.
It's so common, Jay. I mean, you're an incredible woman. You're not only the leader of a business, but you're helping other leaders of other businesses lead those businesses better. You are a leader of leaders. Sling some mud. Let's sling some love around. You're incredible. But so often, incredible people detach from big businesses like you and now me, because they stifle our potential, and they ultimately eject us because they're intimidated by our abilities. We don't look like these older white heteronormative cis men between the ages of 57 and 75 that make up 90% of the 10 richest people in our country, or the 85% of the 100 richest people in the world. They believe that they are the best. And if you do not conform to that paradigm, that vernacular, you're gone. It just so happened that I wasn't going to just go. I could have resigned and walked over the road to JP Morgan and doubled my salary, but I didn't want to leave behind all those people I interviewed, all those 12,000 people who I had a duty of care to, that woman who led the Black Network. I owed it to them to do what I promised I would do, which is to represent their interests and to tell the truth, and ultimately to follow the Public Disclosure Act, which requires us to report these things. When we see a problem that is in the public interest, we must report it. Whistleblowers have a phenomenally tough time. I've had a phenomenally tough time. I lost my home in New York, my partner, my pension, my friends, my career that I'd spent 15 years on. I haven't earned a salary for a year now because of that. But I now have my freedom. I have emancipated myself. And this goes back to this week. It was Nelson Mandela Day on Monday. Nelson Mandela, he went to jail for 27 years for what he believed. And I was prepared to lose everything for what I believed. But ultimately, he was his country's first Black president, his first Black lawyer. He's the first Black Nobel Peace Prize winner of South Africa. And when he got out of jail, it wasn't that long ago, it's from 1990, he then became South Africa's first president. And he led the first elections where every race was invited to vote for the first time ever, including the native Black population, and also gay marriage. He passed gay marriage. South Africa is one of the first countries in the world to pass gay marriage laws. He's not gay, but he did it because he understood through his hardship that if I have this problem, imagine what other problems other people might have. So it makes us phenomenally inclusive when you've gone through hardship like you and I have done, Jane, because you understand that other people must be going through just as bad things and you want to help them all, which hopefully is why you invite me on here, and why I'll always help you.
Yeah, absolutely. And the funny thing is, I remember that I got this kind of passion for Black literature, American literature, when I was like literally about 11 or 12, because my sister had all of these books, like she had the biography of Malcolm X, was one of the books that I read when I was about 12 years old.
That's heavy reading for a 12-year-old.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I had nobody to explain what this meant to me, but I was like, oh my God, there are people in the world that, I was woken up to this whole thing about slavery. And I was like, this is so unfair. You can imagine like 12-year-olds, they're just like, they think the world is a benign place. And then they actually find out that there are some really awful things happening. So so I read a whole load of black literature at that time, and
changes your view, it changes your outlook on life. I do a lot of work with schools, and I'll go into schools. I went into my secondary school for the first time in 18 years 2 weeks ago, and this is the school where the first time I ever got monkey chanted at, because I wasn't a white kid. It happened at this school, and I was given a detention by the headmaster because he mistook me for another brown boy in a year above. So I got detention because I didn't answer to the right name. It was just these silly things that happened, and I went back to this school with some trepidation, but I gave this talk to all of the sixth formers, and I wish I could have stood up there and said, you're going to go into a world where you are judged not by the color of your skin, but by the content of your character, as famously the Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech goes. But instead, I had to explain to them that they are entering a world where people will resent them and detest them for their differences and their uniqueness, and it will intimidate those people, but that they should never feel or apologize for who they are, because they have every right and entitlement to be who they are, and no difference divides humanity. We all have differences, whether it's your big toe is smaller than your little toe, or your brown eyes or blue eyes, or whatever difference we choose to polarize at that point in time. They are all just arbitrary differences that mean absolutely nothing.
Yeah, and that is such an empowering message for young people. That is incredible because, as you said, it's easy for young people to be idealistic and actually think the world is a kind place. And it's not so much that people are going about their daily business looking to hate other people. It's just that people fear others that are not like them, don't they? I think sometimes it's just as simple as that, isn't it?
We are scared of anyone that reminds us that perhaps we aren't the best. There's this I think it's part of the human experience is to try
Yeah.
to be the best. It goes back to a bit of maybe tribalism and sort of out
Yeah.
competing each other, but I
Yeah.
think it worked well for the 270,000 years that humans lived in caves and tribes, and we were defending those tribes against the marauding tribes from other villages or whatever. It worked really well. But now we live in a globalized world, an interconnected world where we've segregated our skills, right? We don't all have to hunter gather anymore. Now we've got the supermarket to do that, and we've got the clothier, the clothes store to get our clothes. We've got the bank to get our money. We've got all these different things now, so we don't need to compete with each other because we are actually all helping each other thrive through our different specialisms, and therefore we should stop these tribalistic behaviors and we should start to work more as a unit. I think once we learn to do that, the human race will really step up a gear, and there's no limit to what we can achieve. We're the only sapient species in the known universe, the only species that's able to ask questions like, who am I? Why do I exist? What is my purpose? What will be my legacy? Those, no one else, no other species on Earth can
True.
override their instincts except for us. So let's do it. Let's
Yeah.
override our instincts.
Yeah, that's such an inspiring message, and I really, really love it. So Ian, let's talk about your consulting journey, because when we first got to know each other, you were quite early stage, and I think you were thinking, "Oh my God, what am I going to do?" And you really had just started out, and that was about a year ago, right? So,
Yeah.
so much has changed for you during that time. So let's hear all about it.
Well, so now I was walking around London. It was Black History Month, so what's that, October? And I was naively thinking, hey, this guy's just broken 5 world records. Everyone is all over the news. Everyone is saying what a hero he is. You'd think that I would get a job offer or something, but I didn't get a single one. Not a single bank called me and said, hey, can we learn from some of the things that you've discovered and I've understood and identified. Not a single bank did that. So I'm walking around London. I'm seeing all these billboards about Black History Month, and there's lots of pictures of Black people
Mm.
on the front of them, and every bank and company is saying how much they care about Black lives. And I realised that in that moment, I understood more about oppression than anyone else in the world, because not only have I represented these people in the bank, but now I'm a whistleblower. Now I'm at the time homeless, unemployed, and also I had also had my job offer from a leading D&I consultancy, the world's biggest LGBTQ consultancy, was cancelled after I was offered the contract, because the board member of that consultancy also happened to be the CEO of the bank that I had just left, and he used his leverage to cancel that. So systemic retaliations hit me all over the shop, and I just realized I have a duty to humanity to capture this knowledge in a firm that can teach other firms how not to make these mistakes, including other D&I consultancies and other banks. So
Yeah.
that's when Deilight Consulting was formed. We're called DEI, and then for diversity, equity, inclusion, and then light, because we fight darkness with light, and we fight hatred with love. We are a full service consultancy, so we do assessment and advisory, change management, coaching, training, speakers, experts, business intelligence, primary research. We're just about to announce the largest ever DE&I research paper and investigation into financial services in history, in conjunction with King's Business School. I hope I can announce that. I think I can. And that will be massive. It's 10 times the size of Project Speak Up was last year. And that will really kick us up a gear, because we'll be able to finally rank financial institutions as how they're doing, and we'll be able to give them advice and support proactively. We're going to do that whether they like it or not, on how they can change and become more meaningful, how they can match their words with meaningful actions. I think that's where we're lacking. The promises are being broken, so let's help them keep their promises. That's what my firm does.
Yeah, and I think that's so amazing. And the thing is, the demand has become insatiable, hasn't it, Ian? So we were talking about this early on before we got on air, but yeah, you're very, very sought after right now.
Well,
Isn't that
people
the
think,
case?
they read whistleblower and they think, oh, this guy's going to be hard, trouble. He's going to be, he's not going to be trustworthy and everything. But when people meet me, they realize that actually it's just the same as racism. If you judge a book by its cover, you're going to see what you want. But actually, I'm not this vindictive, critical, judgmental person that tears people apart. I'm very warm, I'm very kind, I'm very fair, and I'm not in the business of judging people or criticizing people. I'm simply saying, here's my perspective, let me help you understand that perspective, and if you want, I'll stick around and I'll help you deliver your mission as well and keep your promises. I'm all about keeping promises, and if firms like that message, then I'm all ears, and I will never hurt anyone. If they dislike that message and they want to break their promises, then I'm probably not the right consultant for them.
Yeah, but I mean, keeping promises, that is the hallmark of integrity, right? So, I mean, if a financial institution does not want to be aligned with integrity, well, I mean, why should we trust them? Why should we put our money with them? Because, it just makes them, just not have any value, right? Because trust is the most important thing, isn't it, when it comes to financial services?
You bang on the money as always. If you look at the back of a £10 note, or if you're in the US, a $10 note, and you read what's written on it, it actually just says, I promise to pay the bearer the sum of £10. This isn't £10. It's a promissory note. And all the money in the system is essentially just an IOU. And IOUs only work on trust, as you correctly said. Our financial system is built on trust. And when you lose trust, look at what happened with Northern Rock. Suddenly we're seeing queues and queues of people outside a bank. It was still open, it was still solvent, but people lost trust in it, and they didn't believe that it would be able to service their debts. So they took all their money out of it, causing it to fail. The financial system is so delicate. It is built on trust. And if we allow that trust to collapse through illegitimacy, through nepotism, through poor leadership, through entitlement, all these things I was seeing of otherwise untalented men, mostly, who were rising to the top, only by sabotaging the chances of people not like them or better than them, then that unfortunately will be the end of our financial system. We're already seeing it. Fintechs and challenger banks are really taking our banks for a ride at the moment, and their technology is better, their service is better, their product is better, their customer experience is better. The only way our banks will survive, in fact, the only difference between our banks and fintechs, everyone's got technology now. We're in the 21st century industry 4.0. The reason why we call them fintechs rather than banks is because they're inclusive. That's the only difference. That's why they are succeeding, because they're small, they're smaller, they're nimble, they're more inclusive, they're more representative, and that allows them to transcend these issues I'm talking about, the illegitimacy and the nepotism. They don't care about that. Just like you and I don't care about that. We've got small businesses, or I've got a small business that I'm trying to grow, so that I don't have time to be racist. I don't have time to be sexist or homophobic. I need to survive. And the way I survive is I get top talent from wherever I can. I don't care who that is. I don't care where they work from. I don't care what hours they do. I just want them to deliver. And that's the difference between small businesses, startups, fintechs, and ultimately banks. Banks think that they have everything going for them, but they will not exist in a few years' time if they do not get their act together and start behaving themselves.
Powerful message. So if you're a senior leadership in a bank and you're listening to this, get your act together right now.
Tough messages. I'm sorry, but I speak truth. I have to. I'm trying to save these banks. I really am. I know it sounds, and so I hope it doesn't sound vindictive, but it is just my perspective. Take it or leave it. But there is no illusion. Banks are losing market share to fintechs. Banks have all the money, all the staff, all the product, all the resources. Why are they losing? Because they can't change. They need to start to change. Otherwise, they will get left behind.
Yeah, and this is a very long-standing issue. I mean, I remember when I worked in media, I mean, I suppose I still work in media, but when I actually worked in the, big sort of media agencies and advertising agencies and so on, I mean, our home was in Soho. So obviously the city was where obviously all the banking was. And sometimes we used to come together at some kind of drunken event or whatever. And it was an absolute clash of culture because obviously, media agencies were all about, being kind of very authentic, very individual, very outspoken, very, anti-authoritarian in a way, because, you have to be that way in order to be the trailblazer. And, it was noticeable. The culture was so different, a lot of kind of very, very, very sexist, just old school kind of people, really. And there is no place for that in today's society. There really isn't. And I think that is the message, that is one of the reasons why I wanted to have you as a guest. And also, I am right behind you because we live in a very diverse society. Everybody has something to offer, right? And the other thing is this issue of neurodiversity. So one of my clients, for example, he's an ADHD coach, and I've learned a lot about ADHD, which is technically, like a lot of these neurodiverse, sort of conditions, let's just say, they are also superpowers. Like Elon Musk is Asperger's or high functioning autism, right? ADHD gives you incredible energy and focus and purpose. And so used in the right way, those so-called disabilities can be incredible, can't they?
Phenomenal. I mean, look at Albert Einstein. He had dyspraxia and suspected ADHD. Sir Isaac Newton had, I believe, ADHD. And Stephen Hawking, arguably the best mind in human history, had motor neuron disease. Most of us think disease, disability. We think of these things as being negatives, but actually those conditions made those men some of the best minds in history. If only we had some more women to hold up there. But as I said earlier on, the reason women aren't making it into those they are making it now into the Supreme Court, into the Downing Street, into the White House. They're winning Nobel Peace Prizes, sure. But actually, if you look at the number of world leaders who are women, there's less than 10%. It's about 10% of world leaders are women, and the number of women in boardrooms, it's 5%, and it's shrinking. It's such a shame that those roles are, and so is the number of non-white leaders in the FTSE 350. They've shrunk 70% in the last 7 years. We think that we are going through progress. We think the world is getting more tolerant. It is not. The complacency we have that it will be a generational shift, it's an illusion, because they are training people to take their place, these people that don't value difference. So until we actually do something and we change the course of history, we will not, unfortunately, benefit from gradual improvement in hearts and minds. It does not work like that, not in banking at least.
Yeah, that, and another interesting statistic is women founders and venture capital, and also people of color and venture capital. So I read somewhere that something like 2% of venture capital goes to female founded businesses. And in fact, the statistics are even worse when it comes to people of color, which is incredible, isn't it? 2%. What is going on, really? I mean, it's
tribalism. Unfortunately, it's still happening, and it's actually exponential, because as you're describing, that money has come from predominantly white-owned businesses. It's then given to predominantly white-owned businesses, who then start up more white-owned businesses, and it becomes a self-perpetuating eventuality that ultimately we will live in a world where all resources are hoarded by a very small subset of white people. It's not all women, it's not all disabled people, it's not all young people. Actually, if you whittle down all the differences that we don't like, it's actually a very small proportion of white people that actually benefit. It's about something like in the region of 1.1% globally of white people are in control of 95% of the wealth. And that is a very scary number, because undoing that morally and legally, that illegitimacy of the flow of resources and wealth, given what we know from the Human Genome Project, that all human life is equal in terms of capability, that is going to be very hard to unwind. It's going to take generations. There's going to be lots of hazard. There's going to be lots of companies winding up because they can't meet their debts from unwinding all of this injustice that they've perpetuated. And I cannot, it's going to be really hard hitting. The tough times ahead I don't mean to be down, Debbie Downer here, but tough times are ahead, unfortunately, because of the past decisions made by people in generations gone by. We don't have to replicate those same decisions. We can make a decision today. Let's change.
Yeah, and I think the important message is that really that this is not a simple turnaround, a one-time only exercise. Actually shifting a culture is something that it requires consistent effort over a period of time, doesn't it? And eventually, with the right investment and the right effort, businesses will come out on top and they will be recognized as leaders and they will attract the best talent, because this isn't just about being nice to underprivileged people, right, or people who are discriminated against in society. There is also a real commercial imperative there, isn't there, Ian?
That's our brand line. It's because it's commercial, not just correct. You haven't heard me. I don't think you've heard me once say, help Black people, help women. I'm all about this makes financial sense. Let's do this because there's lots of money in this. I'm a banker, so once a banker, always a banker. So I'm looking at the numbers and I'm thinking we can make a fortune if we become the most inclusive bank in the world, if we start to appeal to broader sets of talent, if we run a meritocracy where only the most capable people rise up rather than the least capable. We can really promote our brand. We can promote the right people into the right positions to succeed. And we can stop our price to equity ratio from flatlining as it has done. My bank, if you liquidated all of its assets, its offices and its resources, you'd actually earn more money than if you sold it on the stock market. And that is scary because it meant that every day we were coming in, we were destroying value. And that cannot be the case. These companies, it's the time we've already lost in the court of law. Okay, we know the numbers are going to be bad on the ethnicity pay gap, the gender pay gap. We know they're going to be bad, but the court of public opinion has yet to be won. And the firms that go out there and hold their hands up and decide to change, they will win that court of public opinion. And that is how they will survive the hardship to come, is when people will love them and they can say that company was part of the solution.
That's amazing. Yeah. So, I mean, this message means that Ian is, pretty booked up, with a big wait list for his services. So if you want to engage Ian or his business, I would definitely do it today. Make sure that you make contact with him because he has an incredible offer. And so, Ian, what's the best way for people to find out more about you or to get in touch with you?
We're scaling up so that we can handle the demand. We just signed a major international bank and hopefully talking to a few more. So really exciting times to be actually working with companies and helping them become better. The best way to contact us is on our website, www.deilightconsulting.com. That's DEIlightconsulting.com, where you can find a full list of our training courses, our services. You can contact us there on the form and find out a bit more about our identity.
That's amazing. Well, Ian, I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. It's been such a pleasure to interview you. We've had the most amazing conversation. It's been, I'm absolutely buzzing because it's been a fantastic chat, that we've had. And I know that we will have created incredible value for many of our viewers and listeners.
We say feeling delighted. It's how we always aim to leave people feeling what we're feeling. So I hope I haven't made your guests too miserable, but I'm so grateful.
Job well done.
Thank you.
No. I mean, absolutely. And I mean, the thing is, this image of like a whistleblower as being like, as a kind of sour grapes or something like that. I mean, look, whistleblowers are brave, they're courageous. They're people who care about justice and injustice. I love whistleblowers, they're my kind of people. I mean, I've been like a whistleblower in training ever since I was about 4 years old, Yes.
Well, anyone can be one. We are the last line of defense against wrongdoing that has already happened. That is who we are and what we do. And without us, the public would be less safe. So I'm happy to perform this duty. I wish it would have been someone else, but I'll happily do it again because I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's it really, isn't it? People don't always love leaders. They don't always appreciate them, and they don't always want to stand beside them. That is true. Sometimes people want to kind of go back and hide and like, I'll just let him get on with it and fight my battles. And unfortunately, I think for people like us who are strong people and we care, well, we have those characters that are able to hold the torch for others that are perhaps less able to be strong in this respect. So yeah, it's been great to interview you, Ian. Thank you so much again, and I'll look forward to speaking to you soon and getting the